thank you for coming to this forum. Well, our little forum, I'll put it that way. So, could you start off by telling our communities who you are and why you're running for City Council at large position, and what values and experiences would you bring to a citywide seat?
Well, thank you for having me. My name is Matthew Willard. I grew up in Gentilly. I'm 36 years old. Grew up in a union household and work in tech. So I'm a marketing director of a tech company. And in 2019, I ran for the legislature, had the support and endorsement, a vote, and it definitely made a difference. My race was pretty tight. I ran against Councilmember Green for that race in the runoff, and one of the reasons that I ran was to prioritize economic development, job creation, and opportunities for more people in the city of New Orleans, especially our formerly incarcerated community. And in my 6 years in the legislature, I've passed 36 bills. In 2023, my colleagues of the House Democrats elected me to be the leader of our caucus. I was the youngest one in state's history, only one from the city of New Orleans, and I came in at a time where dynamics significantly shifted in Baton Rouge, right? Not only did we have super majorities in the House and in the Senate, but we also had Governor Landry coming in. And for the past couple of years, I've led our caucus to fight back against a lot of the extreme measures. I've worked with stakeholders and advocacy groups on messaging, on questions, on talk points, on legislation. So from my experience, from my perspective, I should say, my results delivering for the state, for the people of New Orleans, and my experience not only being a state representative, but being leader of our caucus, best positions me for this council at large seat. The reason I'm running right now is because we need a lot of help in the city of New Orleans. And, I look at it, growing up under my grandfather, Dr. Elliott C. Willard, who was a civil rights advocate and certainly a champion for better educational outcomes for our kids. And then, growing up around my aunt, Cynthia Willard Lewis, community service was kind of thrust upon me. And as a kid, I grew up, helping our neighbors. I grew up campaigning. My dad would drop us off in neighborhoods and tell us to knock on doors. And so if I approach policy making as one of being a true public servant, then that means I need to go where the need is the greatest. And right now, as I look at what's going on in the city of New Orleans, I think there is a strong argument that the need is the greatest here at home. So although I love working in Baton Rouge and some of the things that I've been able to do up there, right now I feel a calling to come home and try to turn things around and make sure that City Hall works for everybody in the city of New Orleans.
And in alignment with that, every candidate and resident is complaining about roads, water, lighting, and basic infrastructure issues. What specifically do you believe our city is doing wrong, and what will you do on a city council to fix that issue?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of mismanagement and poor project management coming out of City Hall. If you take, and by the way, really doesn't matter what part of the city you go to, one of the top concerns, if you ask people their top two concerns, it's going to be roads from a city perspective. And you're familiar, we got billions of dollars tied to Hurricane Katrina to do road work projects, and that's kind of transformative money, right? And the city messed up. First of all, we waited too long to start deploying that money. And then once we did, we started trying to do all these projects at the same time. And that's why neighbors were just sitting around with no access to their driveway. It was a nightmare. And fundamentally, it was poor project management. And, the longer you wait to spend money, the less valuable the money becomes because of inflation. And so now all of a sudden the billions you get are reduced because you take so long to spend it, and the community who thought they were getting new roads suddenly don't get them, to the extent that City Council right now is trying to put forward a $500 million bonding measure to do more road works in the city of New Orleans. So, the infrastructure is very important, but also the leadership aspect is very important. And, I don't like to drop bombs. I don't like to start mess. I like to focus on, how do I solve this problem? And I think we are in desperate need of that type of approach in City Hall. And so that would be my solution, embracing this council at large position. We have so many problems. I mean, broken street lights, which obviously contribute to further crime in our neighborhoods, red lights that don't work. If it rains hard during the summer, it might flood on your street. Our recreational playgrounds in the city of New Orleans are neglected. I mean, there's so much that we have to do. And if you take a step back and think about the essential role of local government, it's to handle all of those issues. Mm-hmm. And so we have to focus our efforts on handling those issues to make it easier and more affordable for people to live in the city of New Orleans.
And again, and speaking about people living in a city, for many people, the rent is really too high, and it's a big reason people move out of the city. Also, some of the apartments are in horrible conditions. While in a legislature, you dealt firsthand with these landlord associations during the fight to ban the box on rental applications. Nearly every politician talks about homeowners, but what can you do on the city council that will help renters?
Well, first I want to talk about the legislation, and Voice of the Experience was instrumental in me pushing that legislation. Mm-hmm. And if I had to be completely honest with you, it is, probably the darkest spot on my legislative tenure, because I never was able to get that bill to the governor's desk and signed into law. My friend Kiana was kind of the impetus for me pushing that bill. He's formerly incarcerated. He's got a great credit score. He makes good money, and he couldn't, get an apartment. So he was spending thousands of dollars through application fees for apartments. Wow. And they ran his criminal record, and they use these automated systems, and they find that, and they automatically toss him out. He doesn't know that they're going to run it, right? And people like that, people in Kiana's positions, they're desperate. They need somewhere to live, So so we were trying to address that in the legislature, and very unfortunate that I tried 3 years in a row to pass that legislation. As far as affordable rents in the city of New Orleans, I mean, all you have to do is drive around and look at all of the blighted and vacant properties that we have in the city. Look at all the lots that we have in the city. We dedicated 2% of the general fund to affordable housing, and some of the first measures that I would like to see that money utilized for is some type of program that can help get those properties back into commerce and have them put them out on rent at affordable rates so that working families in the city of New Orleans can afford them. And you touched on some of the dilapidated apartment complexes we have in the city of New Orleans. There has to be a way for the city to work there to beautify those, and because if you make them nicer, obviously the community benefits, the neighbors benefit as well, but then it becomes a viable alternative for people who don't have all the money to have somewhere to stay, to live, to call their home that's affordable. So those are a couple of things that I would like to focus on. But homeowners insurance is very expensive right now, and landlords right now have to pay that cost, and they factor that into their rental rates. It's just we're losing the essence of our culture. We're losing the essence of our city because it's too unaffordable to live here. And then when people start to balance out the quality of life that they receive in the city of New Orleans, for a lot of people it makes sense to hop over the Paris line to St. Bernard or even Slidell. And so we definitely have a lot of work to do. The affordability and the ease of livability are really two focus areas for me in this council at large race.
Okay, so we're going to switch over.
Everyone, as you just mentioned, we have a lot of complaints. Like we're moving out of the city because Energy and Sewage and Water Board is just it's been the talk, right? From the cost to the service, what is one concrete deliverable you'll move to address these complaints if elected?
Can I give you one that I already did?
Yeah, you could. Yeah, come on, give it to me.
So although I'm a state representative right now, a lot of the issues that I receive in my office deal with local matters, and one of the top issues was related to sewage and water board bills. And as I review the bills and reach out to Sewage and Water Board or a council member for assistance, almost across the board, they were always an estimated bill. And it was funny. One day I woke up and I said, you know what? I'm going to just fix this, because I started having issues at my house. I moved into a new house a couple of years ago, and they couldn't get my bill right. It was always inaccurate. And even as a state representative, this was a weeks-long process to get a remedy, right? And it was because I had to keep following up. Like, they weren't following up. I had to keep following up. So I woke up one morning and I said, I'm just going to put a bill in place that says they can't do estimated billing anymore. And so last year I actually passed that legislation that says Sewage and Water Board can no longer issue estimated bills. And they were trying to get me to table it because they're rolling out the smart meters. And I said, well, this bill will help you do that faster. And so it became law earlier this year. So that's one thing that I've already done as it relates.
Thank you. Because I didn't like that anyway. I wasn't doing
so
it.
that's
decreased with
the smart meter. I'm hearing mixed reviews on it. Some people, their bills go up. Some people are seeing the decrease. But we'll keep working through the kinks on that process. But as it relates to Sewage and Water Board, we need accountability. We need transparency. I hesitate to say it needs to go under DPW because the city does not have a great track record right now managing infrastructure and assets, right? But we have to do something. And so that would be my focus on that area. And, the council has done some things to help with billing disputes, but my hope is that the automated smart meters really fix that. But a couple of things that you really have to get by in the city of New Orleans, you have to have a roof over your home, over your head. You have to have access to water, and you have to have power. And so as we pivot over to the energy side, there's a couple of ideas that I want to do. One, TCA helps people pay their utility bills. Right. And so a lot of times it's like chronic people who come before TCA because they constantly need help paying their utility bills. One thing that I want to do is figure out a way to utilize energy to help weatherize people's homes, because those chronic people coming in who need assistance with their utility bills, they may have a hole in their roof, they may have a hole in their floor, their windows might not work, right? And so it's actually cheaper to make those repairs for homeowners as opposed to just helping them pay their utility bills. So that's one thing that I want to do that I think would have added benefits, for years to come. Another thing that I think we have to do a better job of as far as regulation goes is the council needs to do their own homework as well. You can't just take for gospel what the advisors say, right? And so, in this position, I would, talk a lot and work closely with Devontae Lewis, who's my friend, but also on the Public Service Commission. Yes. But for anybody out there watching or listening and is familiar with my legislative record, they know I do my own homework, right? And so I will be doing my own homework because we can't continue funding infrastructure for energy solely on the backs of the people in the city of New Orleans. If you look at our population, we have a lot of older people in the city of New Orleans who are living on fixed incomes. And with increase in insurance costs, with increases in property taxes, we have to do more. They can't afford really any increase in their monthly expenses. And so something else that I would like to explore are some programs to help really our most vulnerable, our senior citizens, stay in their home and have a better quality of life in the city of New Orleans, because they poured so much into our city and into our community. They shouldn't have to struggle as they reach their golden years.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to move into jail and oversight, phase 3, and outcomes. The sheriff office has always been a massive part of our budget. And the $100 million phase 3 jail expansion is the biggest city construction project that we can recall. I saw it on yesterday. It's massive. But what is your take on how the city can create accountability? And who do you hold accountable when a jail is bursting at the seams?
That's a really good question as it relates to accountability. And it's not just with the sheriff and the jail. In order to have accountability, you need transparency. And the council is responsible for that budget. And so I know there's been a lot of talk of moving the sheriff's office into the brass system. I think, that's probably a good move. But I really think we, as city council members, you have power of the purse, right? In order to make informed decisions, you have to know what's going on. But at the same time, you can't hold it over somebody's head, right? They need the money to be able to do the job,
right?
And so I think there has to be a balanced approach right there. As far as the overpopulation in the jail, I don't know who you blame for that. Ideally, you don't want a large prison population. Right, but what happens when you have too many people in a jail? I think it's designed for 1,200 people,
right.
And I think right now we might be closer to 1,800 people. That's not a good situation.
And you're gonna have to let some folks out.
Let them out. I mean, there's different ways to approach it, but
right.
If you have a facility designed for 1,200, where the sheriff's role is to make sure that they stay in there, her staff are safe and everything like that. If you have too many people, it's going to breed an environment that is not safe, right?
Right.
And so that would be my perspective as far as who's responsible for the overpopulation. I guess you could blame the legislature for all the new bills that, I mean, I guess you could blame the legislature for that.
That's why I'm pointing the finger at.
Well, there you go. There you go.
Yeah,
Yes.
and we know why they have so many in jail.
Notice I didn't say myself.
Right.
We know,
Don't
we
take
know
the blame.
Yeah.
But I just want to pick up on community safety.
Mm-hmm.
There are currently hundreds of open jobs to work in the jail and the police department.
Mm-hmm.
But we know what public safety goes far beyond that. What public safety programs or issues will you champion other than through the sheriff or NOPD to make people safe? And what data can we collect to know the impact?
Yeah, so when I talk about public safety, I go beyond just law enforcement. Earlier we were talking about the status of our neighborhoods. And there's certain parts of the city where you drive around and their street lights are functioning. But then there's other parts where the street lights are not working, right? That's a public safety concern as far as I'm concerned. There's parts of the city where you drive around and, maybe half of the properties are dilapidated or in blighted conditions. That's a public safety measure to me. Even the status of our roads is a public safety measure for me. As far as initiatives that I would champion, we have to invest in our children. I would be looking for any and all opportunities to expand not only recreational but educational opportunities for our kids. When I was growing up, NORD was a robust program. They had activities designed year-round, and they were located all throughout the city. And you didn't necessarily even need a car to go participate at activities at your NORD facility, and it's just drastically changed. But beyond those recreational activities, something else that I would like to see is, we have a lot of kids struggling. Not just in New Orleans, but, in New Orleans, across the state. And if you put yourself in a position where you're a kid coming out of a household that's not stable, You may not necessarily eat 3 meals a day or get served 3 meals a day. You're witnessing things that no child should ever see. It's tough for that kid to go to school and focus and learn.
Right.
And so something else that I would like to see is more educational opportunities throughout the city. And I think there's a way to kind of weave that in with some of the NORD programming, right? But we definitely have to invest in our kids and do everything that we can to support our children. As far as the law enforcement angle is concerned, I think a reallocation of resources would make sense. We know that throughout the city there are hotspots for crime. And we know that in a lot of those areas, they don't get the support or the need that those neighbors want from law enforcement in their communities. And so why is that, right? If that's where the bulk of the crime is happening, why don't we have a good presence of law enforcement in those areas, working and talking with the neighbors in a collaborative effort to keep those communities safe? And so that's something that I think, particularly NOPD should be exploring as far as the public safety angle goes.
Okay. Well, actually, you touched on NORD,
Right.
Which is, I agree with you. All of that is much needed within the NORD system. So regarding mental health and addiction, what ordinances or budget items will you focus on in your first 3 months in office that will address the issues of mental health and addiction?
Yeah, the mobile crisis interventionist is desperately needed in the city of New Orleans. So I would definitely continue pushing for more allocation of resources toward that program because, for me personally, if you have somebody who is in a mental health crisis at the moment, it's not the best idea for police officers to show up with guns drawn,
Right.
and that being really the first person that person encounters. We've seen instances throughout the country where people with mental health issues or maybe even just autism have really bad encounters with law enforcement and unfortunately sometimes losing their life. And so that's one thing that I would explore. Also working with some of our partners in the city like Odyssey House and the New Orleans Mission on seeing how we can not only work together to alleviate the homelessness issue in the city of New Orleans, but also the mental health crisis, right? And the
Right.
substance use disorder crisis that we have in the city. We have not rebounded in the funding that goes into mental health and substance use disorder treatment since the Jindal years. And I think if you drive around the city of New Orleans, it's visible. You can literally see it. If you come from a family with means, they can ship you to another state and they can take you immediately and start getting you treated and stabilized. But here in the city of New Orleans, where so many of our families are just struggling to get by, they don't have many options, right? And Odyssey House constantly has a wait list and you're not guaranteed to get in. And so we have to invest in those opportunities. I mean, if we really want to change the future of the city of New Orleans, we really have to come up with innovative ways and put our money where our mouth is, if I'm speaking frank with you, to invest in our community struggling with mental health and substance use disorders.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you. I'm going to move to surveillance tech and civil liberties. America has become a place where our personal data is constantly for sale, and many of us have no trust in Trump.
No trust.
No Trump, no trust. Oh, yeah, we not falling for it, right?
You're right.
So, we have no trust in Trump. We have no trust in Landry. We have no trust in ICE. So we feeling betrayed, and facial recognition and online surveillance has been used in this country and others for like targeting folks, and especially such as criticism of Israel.
Mm-hmm.
As New Orleans keep moving toward a fully surveillance state, what is your position on the ordinance current on the civil council agenda, and where, if anywhere, do we draw the line? Like, do we put it to a stop?
Yeah, I think I would draw the line at the ordinance that's before the council right now. I've repeatedly stated that I'm opposed to it. Crime is right now in the city of New Orleans. Crime is going down. It's still high, and I always say that it's relative, meaning that if you were a victim of crime, or if a loved one or a family member was a victim of crime, it's probably the most important issue that you're dealing with at that moment in your life. I don't think that we have to give up our liberties and our freedoms to make us safer.
Right.
And so for me, the ordinance before the council, I believe it goes beyond just facial recognition technology. I think there's also a component of like listening devices and whatnot. And so that's Big Brother. Right, that freaks I think that freaks out most people. Right, that's an intrusion of your privacy. And what I'll say is, if I'm being totally honest, there may be benefits to utilizing certain technologies, but I don't want to give up my freedom. Exactly, at what cost? I don't want to give up my liberties and my freedoms. And it's a ripple effect, right? So one of my big concerns about the facial recognition technology is that it somehow gets weaved into a system that is utilized by the federal government to not only, and this is the crazy part, right now we know that they are going after illegal immigrants, but my concern with technology like that would be them going after not just illegal, but legal immigrants, right?
And some of
and
us.
and political and political opponents, right? And people who are taking an international position contrary to what the president wants or Congress wants. And if that's not government overreach, I don't know what is. We gave up a lot of freedoms after 9/11, right? And so I think there's a movement to head in that direction again, but we have to understand that it's hard to come back from stuff like this. So once you put it into action, once you put it into place, it's hard to dial it back. And so with the status of the country and the state right now, I am very fearful to utilize those type of technologies, because, and then this is the bigger part for me. That is in response to crime that's already occurred. And I would like to focus efforts and resources on preventing crime from happening. Right. And so that is something else that I think is sometimes lost in this conversation, too. This is, somewhat sensationalizing it, but it's after the fact. The crime has already occurred. Right. So it's a tool to utilize after a crime has already occurred. Right. How can we focus on preventing those crimes before they even happen?
Okay.
Yes. Home rule, sanctuary, and closing. New Orleans City Council and Mayor recently let a federal judge tell us to build the Phase 3 jail without even putting up a fight. We have also had a government deploy state police, and none of us will be surprised to see the National Guard or ICE agents patrolling our streets, or the legislature deciding to take even more of the funds we generate. Do you see any way that our city can stand up against these outsider influencers if they want to take control of New Orleans?
Yeah, and I to some extent, I think the city has already done a lot of that. For instance, earlier this is not a way that the city stood up, but this is kind of state overreach and getting involved in New Orleans affairs. Earlier this year during session, there was a bill proposed that actually passed that would basically say the jail in the city of New Orleans have to comply with ICE. And have to use resources to help ICE. And the problem is, the sheriff and the city thought that it may violate consent decrees, right? And so how we were put in a spot, and I don't know if a final statement has been issued on the matter, but you're in a position where a state law is forcing you to do something that makes you violate a federal consent decree. What are you supposed to do in that situation, right? I think New Orleans is unlike any place in the world. We're very unique. And as it relates to the state of Louisiana, we are the place to be. We are the place to go. I don't think there's anything the state can do to make us get on that same page with some of the efforts that they've been trying to do. We have to retain our autonomy. We have to retain our authority. I'm hopeful for our future, the city's future, and next year we'll have a new mayor, we'll have a new city council. I'm optimistic. I still have good relationships in Baton Rouge. I'm hoping that we can have a better working relationship. Right. When state police came in with Troop NOLA, I think there was deep unease in the city across the board. And you remember the first things that we kept hearing about with Troop NOLA is crash. Right. They kept having these serious crashes. But honestly, when I speak to people in the community right now, they're more okay with it. There's better collaboration with NOPD right now. And, one area that I think state police is best utilized is probably in the French Quarter. And if you think about it, the French Quarter is an economic driver for the entire state. But the population visiting the French Quarter is outside of the state, right? And so this asset that is in the city of New Orleans is used to generate money for the state of Louisiana. So it makes sense to utilize some state resources to help it and keep the people in the French Quarter safe. Outside of that, highways and interstates patrol, I think that makes sense, a good use of Troop NOLA. But we have to fight back when we have to fight back, and we can't just acquiesce just because somebody else is telling us to do that. Right. There's been a lot of movements that have been started this way, and I think the people of New Orleans enjoy their independence, right? And I think that a lot of people in New Orleans view themselves differently from the state of Louisiana. It's like I'm from New Orleans, Yeah. But that's that's kind of how my perspective is on that, and having somebody tell, and as it relates to the courts, you can fight back in the courts, you can challenge it in the courts, and you can go through litigation, and you can appeal. If you lose, you can go to the appellate court, you can go to the Supreme Court, but once the courts issue a ruling, it's kind of hard to not follow that. Right. Because then you'll have additional costs on the back end for that.
Thank you. I have one additional question, right? And I asked another candidate this question. Why do you think folks in the legislature are now running for local offices?
I can't speak for everybody, but I think we all see the status of the city right now and kind of just want to offer ourselves to be of service. What I'll tell you is I see a fundamental flaw in City Hall right now. Lack of vision, collaboration, and project management. And I believe those are all assets that I bring to the table. And my experience sort of demonstrates that in the legislature and professionally, because I did project management for a team of engineers for almost 3 years. And, I'm born and raised here. I was born in the East on Norgate Drive and moved to Gentilly when I was 6 or 7 years old. I think 6 years old. And this is my city. I can't see myself really living anywhere else. And my family text thread every once in a while, somebody is saying we need to move, this is ridiculous, we need to go somewhere else. And at the end of the day, this is our home. This is our home, right? And if I'm here, if I'm committed to it, I need to try to turn things around. And from my perspective, the best opportunity that I have to do that is from this council at large position right now.
No, and I'm glad you asked that question because now we need someone strong to fill those positions of everybody that's leaving because y'all did
Yep.
and are doing, a fantastic job.
There's
But
there's
we need people. Y'all need to like duplicate.
Oh,
yourself.
there's about 5 people who have already reached out to me about my position, and I tell them, I'm focused on winning this at-large seat right now, so you got to let me deal with this, and then we'll talk about the legislature. But what I'll say is, when I was elected in 2019, we had a bunch of more than half of the New Orleans delegation was freshmen going into the 2020 session. You had me, you had my seatmate, Representative Jason Hughes, you have Representative Candice Newell, you had Representative Mandy Landry, you had Representative Amy Freeman, and Representative at the time Representative Royce Duplessis had been there for about a year or so, and then over in the Senate you had Senator Jimmy Harris, Senator Joe Bowie, Senator Troy Carter at the time. And so most of the delegation that started off in that 2020 session were freshmen. And I think we didn't waste any time. We started swinging for the fences and got to work and passing bills and problem solving. So again, optimistic. I think we have great talent in the city of New Orleans. I think we have great fighters in the city of New Orleans. So I'm comfortable that somebody great will come behind me and represent District 97.
Because we know all of you that are leaving will help those.
Correct.
To get to move
and
forward,
look,
everything that you all have started.
I have great even as chairperson of the House Democratic Caucus, I'm well respected by my Republican colleagues, and I have great relationships with them, and really good relationship with the Speaker of the House. So should I win this race, and I'm feeling good about it, I will try to get whoever comes behind me on good committee assignments, because that's very important. And I'll try to shorten their onboarding process in the legislature and make introductions to some of my colleagues that I have really good relationships with, who are interested in working across the aisle to solve big problems. Because there are Republicans in the legislature who are interested in a collaborative approach to do good things. And so that's I would make those introductions and do whatever I can to help any new members going up to Baton Rouge get on their feet faster.
Okay.
Wow.
Well, thank you so much. This has been
Time flew by.
Informative, talk. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you.